Welcome back. We got a great show for you today. It's called Stuck in the Agent Muck. Ditch these 5 bad habits now. But before we get to it, we don't normally talk about breaking news, but this report came out yesterday, and I know it will motivate most of you to the realization that the new market is here. In other words, we're going to have a fantastic, certainly compared to 2024 and 2023 year, for home sales. And the headline is as follows, and this is directly from Fannie Mae. Home price growth re-accelerates in fourth quarter. Now, why does that matter? Here's a simple fact. Does price growth usually accelerate or decelerate in fourth quarter of every year? It really, generally speaking, does the slowing down routine every single year. So this is the first time in maybe 10 years where home price growth, in other words, the cost of homes is accelerating. Guys, think about it. Think how counterintuitive that is. Normally in the winter, you have what? Fewer home sales, you have fewer buyers, you have all the price reductions, all the things. But now, this time of year, we don't, which means first quarter right now, dear listener, of 2025 is going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's all good news, as you point out, especially this time of year. And this comes straight off of the headlines of yesterday. Single-family home prices increased by 5.8% from last quarter of last year to first quarter of this year, an acceleration from the previous quarter's downwardly revised annual growth rate of 5.4%, according to that latest Fannie Mae report, the Home Price Index report. So that's all good news. And they also pointed out that this is in spite of the fact that rates are still relatively high, not historically high, but relatively high, went up fourth quarter to first quarter, hovering around the 7s, maybe a little bit less than 7. We also have more inventory than we used to.
But that's the thing where you just said it. So you not only do you have, this is the cool part of it all, right? Mm-hmm. The big takeaway. You have more inventory, which should mean less price appreciation.
Right.
And you have higher rates, which should mean less price appreciation. And you have fourth quarter in the winter, which should mean less price appreciation.
And yet,
okay, so hopefully you guys are really buckled in for what's going to be a very fantastic, I think, probably the best year in a long time in terms of home sales. Now remember, in most markets, most of the home sales happen in the first half of the year. So make sure you're really locked in right now. And one of the best ways for you to do that is join Premier Coaching. Simply go to premiercoaching.com or text the word Premier to 47372. And you can join Premier Coaching right now for free. Now, a lot of you have been anticipating the release of Ethical Real Estate Professional, which is our new exclusive designation. We are going to be including that in Premier Coaching. We're going through an upgrade cycle right now, which, we've been talking about this for really the last 4 months. So it's a huge job because our coaching program comes with an enormous amount of material and we had to upgrade everything. We have all the scripts, all the objection handlers, all the everything, but it's all done and it's waiting for you over on Premier Coaching. Your access to Ethical Real Estate Professional will commence probably within 2 weeks. So join Premier Coaching right now. Just go right over there because let's just be honest, guys, you need the education, you need the training, you need the motivation, you need the accountability that's going to make it so you make the most of what's going to be a fantastic year. So go to premiercoaching.com and you can join Premier Coaching right now for free. And yes, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our fantastic Harris certified coaches.
All right, so again, our topic today, stuck in the agent muck, ditch these 5 bad habits now. Now, you might not be suffering from all 5 bad habits. Maybe it's just 1 or 2, but in case you're going to identify those over our little podcast here, how can they get the notes?
Well, that's right. Thank you. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is where all of our notes live. It's our daily newsletter. It doesn't cost you anything. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, drop in your email address, and then you have to hop over to your actual email and double opt in. You have to confirm you want the subscription, and then you're off to the races.
All right, so to achieve your highest potential, identify and replace these 5 critical bad habits with behaviors that do drive success. The most successful real estate professionals, like many of you listening, know how to avoid these pitfalls. Now, some of you avoid these pitfalls most of the time, but when it's cold outside and it's dreary and it's you're kicking off a whole new year, you might make a slip and fall back into these bad habits. So follow along with the notes. Number 1, first bad habit, lack of what we call stick-to-it-ness. What is stick-to-it-ness? Well, success comes to those who stay the course. Following one course until successful, that actually makes a nice acronym called FOCUS, F-O-C-U-S, follow one course until successful. That is the hallmark of top producers. You and I used to have a sign in our office that said, repetitious boredom pays off, to remind us to focus, follow that one course until successful. It's not follow one course until you feel like you're moving forward for one day. It's until you find that success, right?
I'd forgotten about that sign we had, repetition boredom pays off. And you know what, that is a great, hopefully you don't have that in your notes, but that's something we should talk about more often on the podcast, because it really is true. You know, what you want is a boring business. What you want is a business with no real high highs or low lows. What you want is a business that's mostly like the post office. That's what Julie and I used to say as a joke, but it's true. Where things just happen on a regular basis, including the net profit that you make every single month from your business. That's what you truly want from your business. And that only comes from essentially doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. But I digress. Julie?
Yes, so another example of stick-to-it-ness is this fact. The average close happens after asking for the business between 5 and 8 times.
Now, we have to be careful when we say that, because 5 and 8 times that you're asking isn't, will you list your house with me? Will you list your house with me? Will you list your house with me? There are a lot of different ways that you can ask for the sale, ask for the listing contract, ask for the buyer to sign the contract, ask for them to commit to working exclusively with you. And we teach you that in Premier Coaching. And yes, one of the scripts is sign the contract, please. But the reality of it is most of the other ways are less direct and easy for anyone to say. So when you hear us say that the average close happens after 5 or 8 times, I would say probably on average 7 of those 8 closes are really soft closes. You're just sort of having a friendly conversation where you mention something that almost seems indirect about them purchasing the house, to which then they'll get and indicate what their motivation is.
That's right. Scripts that start with things like "what would happen if."
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Not when do you plan on moving or sign the contract.
Ideally, Bob, how soon do you want to be in the new home? Okay, that's actually a close, isn't it? Because Bob is giving you an indication what his time frame is, and that's something that all of you guys can ask, and then you can work back. And then Bob's obviously thinking about his future and buying that house.
Exactly. All right. Another example of sticking to it is the jet analogy that you hear from us now and then on this podcast. We always say stop taking off and re-landing the plane before reaching cruising altitude. So, Tim, this is what?
Well, I don't want to give that analogy. It takes too long. But the gist of it is it takes a long time to get to basically where you're at cruising altitude, where things get boring, where things are easy. And so you have to give yourself the patience to allow yourself to work up to that level. And the jet taking off analogy is essentially in 4 steps. I'll just do it quick. It's loading the plane. It's braking. It's essentially leaving the airport and the runway. It's getting up to altitude, and then it's getting up to cruising altitude. And the jet uses most of the fuel when it's leaving the airport and it's getting up to altitude. And that's where most agents quit. And that's where did I originally get that idea? It's very simple. It's from the 4 stages of learning. I just thought I'd make it into something a little bit less wonkish, a little less nerdy. And the 4 stages of learning are something we also, again, we reflect upon often on this podcast, because it's very telling. Well, when someone's willing to be introspective and actually determine where they are in this learning, I think, phase. The first one is unconscious incompetence. That's where you don't know where you don't know. In other words, you're going through life thinking, well, really not knowing what you don't know. And that's true with most real estate agents, especially in a changing market like this, where essentially you're having to, by the way, we've been telling you guys for a long time that eventually what will happen is buyers will just sort of settle into higher interest rates. Clearly that's what's happening. And so it's no longer, okay, we're going to wait for rates to drop. And this is the clearest indication ever that that's going to be, lead to a massive market shift. So make sure you're part of it. But if you're using old scripts, you're unconsciously incompetent that your skill set is not up to par with what the market demands. And the next phase is, Julie?
Conscious incompetence.
That's where you know that you don't know because you've lost some deals. You've basically started to fail.
It's an aha moment.
Exactly, an epiphany, but usually, unfortunately, on the downside. And then the next one is?
Conscious competence. You are consciously competent. That means you're using script, you're using presentations, you're starting to get the results, but you have to be very conscious and do those things.
You're still having to think. It's
Yes.
still taking effort. It's still taking, what comes out of your mouth is because you're thinking about what to say next. And the phase after that is unconscious competence. And that's basically where you're on autopilot. That's the cruising altitude. So hopefully you guys see that as the tie into the jet taking off analogy. So where are you on that spectrum? You're different places on different things. If you've just started your physical workout for the year, you're in the you're on the conscious incompetence phase, where you're probably realizing, if you've not worked out in a long time or ever, that you don't know what you don't know. That's great, congratulations. But here's really the reason Julie inserted that into the notes, is because if you don't realize that the whole process of getting to cruising altitude takes sometimes years, if not decades, that you're going to quit too soon and you're never going to reach the stage of mastery. And that's where things get easier. And that's where, frankly, all the things, your education, your money, frankly, your relationships, they start to compound. So if you feel like you've been struggling for a long period of time, I'll tell you for sure the reason why, or one of the reasons why, is because you simply give up too soon. See Julie's first point.
Yes, very well said. Number 2, never mastering the basics. And the second bad habit, building a strong foundation is critical. So mastering the fundamentals of proactive lead generation, listing presentations, buyer presentations, pre-qualifying and negotiating before you even consider scaling your business. And you may not even have to scale or build a team or any of those things when you've been really great at the things on this list. Avoid shortcuts like hiring a team too early or neglecting personal development. Excellence in the basics ensures your long-term success.
What are we talking about? We're talking about things like knowing how to proactively lead generate. So if your only source of lead generation right now is buying leads, well, then you've neglected the basics. Knowing how to pre-qualify. If, expecting someone else to pre-qualify your leads for you or putting them in a drip campaign, hoping one day they'll raise their hand when they're ready to transact with you, that is a sign that you've neglected the basics. Not having a listing presentation, not having, even more basic, not having a pre-listing pack. A pre-listing pack, when you use ours, it's included in Premier Coaching and now with Ethical Real Estate Professional. The pre-listing pack is essentially your silent salesperson. It's perhaps the most powerful way to ensure that you're going to get that listing before you even go out on the appointment. And just to remind you, so what happens is you set the appointment, you pre-qualify the lead, the seller, then you send the pre-listing pack. And the pre-listing pack, the reason it works is because it removes all the stress from the appointment when you actually go to meet with the seller. It answers all the heavy lift questions like, what are you going to do to sell my home? What are you going to do if I'm not happy? What's your commission rate? What's your this? What's your other thing? All the nasty, ugly questions that agents live in fear of being asked when they go on a listing appointment, those questions are all asked or all answered at a very high level when you send our pre-listing pack. And our pre-listing pack is something that you can customize. So when you join Premier Coaching, you're going to have an Ethical Real Estate Professional pre-listing pack if you choose to use that one, which you should. And if you can want to see what that's going to look like for you, just go to ethicalrealestateprofessional.com and look at the website. Your name will be featured there. You're going to have that prestigious designation. You're going to be, no matter what brokerage you're with, you're going to be sending the pre-listing pack for the listing appointments prior to going on the appointments. The seller is going to see you're part of this elite group. The seller is going to see your professional presentation. And usually, if you show up on time and don't make an ass of yourself, that listing is yours because none of the other agents are going to have had that organized approach. Well, we've also created the same thing on the buyer side because guess what? You need to get buyer contracts signed now too. So we have a pre-listing pack or call it pre-presentation pack on the buyer side of the transaction. So that's what we've created for you as far as Premier Coaching, but that's really where your mind needs to go. And that goes back to the point I was making earlier about the fact that this new market is going to necessitate a new skill level and a new approach to the business. So like everyone's going to have, ubiquitous means basically everything's the same, indistinguishable, right? Like gallons of milk. Agents in the eyes of consumers are ubiquitous. We're all basically the same. So when this consumer goes to the virtual agent cooler at the grocery store, they're looking for the gallon of milk that's the least expensive, that has, essentially it's going to stay fresh in the refrigerator the longest. Isn't that essentially what it is? There's no real discernible difference in gallons of milk. It's all about price. And unfortunately, that's essentially a commodity. That's what a lot of agents force themselves into that paradigm as well. So the seller ends up listing with whoever's the cheapest and whoever tells them the highest price, right? That is not a professional approach to selling real estate. So what we've done with Ethical Real Estate Professional, and you'll learn about that when you're joining Premier Coaching at premiercoaching.com, is we made it so you're different. We've made it so you're exceptional. We've made it so the seller is going to want to hire you over everyone else. That's the thing having done this for over 20 years, coaching and training agents, we know for a fact that the reason that most agents never try to pursue becoming listing agents is simply for the fact that they don't have the skill set. And they're fearful because they know they don't have the skill set. So they only end up listing people, their centers of influence, past clients, the people that essentially don't ask them to compete. But if you really want to go to the next level in your business, you're going to have to know how to compete, and you're obviously going to have to know how to win. I've just laid the breadcrumbs out for you. I wonder if you're paying attention. Go to premiercoaching.com and join Premier Coaching immediately, and you can do so right now for free.
All right, so bad habit number 3 is focusing only on liquidity events. What does that mean? Well, stop waiting for a windfall to save or invest. The path to wealth is built through disciplined, consistent saving habits, not one-time big breaks. So save at least 10% from each commission, every commission, more if you can, but do it every single time. And don't mix that savings with your tax account because the tax money isn't yours.
So we're going to talk about how we really learned that. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
All right, so in our first year in business, Julie and I, between closed and pendings, had over 100 closed and pendings. We'd broken all records for first year success. We were in our early 20s. This has been well documented, won all kinds of awards and just the whole thing. That sort of indirectly launched our coaching business too without us really knowing it. But that aside, what we didn't do, because no one ever we didn't think to check, and we'd grown up thinking, well, rich don't pay taxes. Sometimes there's all these ways you can, get out of paying taxes, and we were just selling real estate, We were blissfully ignorant, as the saying goes.
We didn't even know what tax rate we'd be in.
No, we didn't know anything about it. We were just schlepping
Babes
house.
in the woods.
Right, exactly. So the year ends, and we then were meeting with our then accountant, and she tells us, well, you guys owe all this amount of money for the amount of money that you guys earned. Even we didn't have any deductions to speak of because Julie and I weren't buying leads or doing marketing and branding. We were just, essentially doing what we coach most of you guys to do now. And obviously, you want to be proactive lead generation based and marketing enhanced or passive lead generation enhanced. But we were just doing the proactive, so we were running huge profit margins. So all the money we earned was basically our net profit. So we had a big ass tax bill. So big ass tax bill entering into the new year. That was kind of daunting. Now, fortunately, Remax, who had become the golden children at Remax because we were the agents of the year and all of that internationally, they ended up sending us a really sweet listing referral where the commission on that listing referral almost paid all the taxes from the previous year. And we got lucky, basically.
And was extremely good timing.
Yeah, it was extremely good timing. It closed right before taxes were due. It was just awesome that they did that. And they didn't even know we had this stressor, but they probably did know. In any event,
it was luck.
It was luck, yes. And that luck led to us saving our bacon. But the reality of it is that's something that, it's easy to make that mistake because we see this happening with coaching clients. They will maybe save for taxes, but they won't save for savings. They'll maybe save for savings, but they won't save for any kind of retirement.
That's why I say don't mix those two. Right?
I know, I understand. And I'm just merely making the point that when you complete the real estate treasure map, which is included in Premier Coaching, it actually is going to show you the discipline of having to save into the individual buckets so you don't run into those problems. Now, it is not, it's not interesting, it's boring, and it's the doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, but it'll also force you to run a professional business and have a more organized, positive life because you won't be worrying like most other agents do about what's hiding behind door number 2.
Yeah, that's well said. Now, to close that point, there's a great quote from Warren Buffett. Speaking of discipline,
Yep.
He said, do not save what is left after spending. That sounds a lot like agents, doesn't it? But spend what is left after saving.
Well, and that's really the bottom line. And we teach you guys to do this again in coaching, but really it should be something your grandma taught you, frankly. Save off the top. When you make $1, save 10 cents. When you obviously start with 10%, and as you can afford to, you save more and more and more. There was a mentor that Julie and I had named Jim Duvall. He sort of adopted us. We met him when we were Howard Britton stars. And he and I would have these sort of random calls. He would just sort of call out of the blue. Turns out Jim Duvall was a billionaire, and when I first started talking to him, I didn't know he was a billionaire. I just knew they have a lot of assets because I heard the rumors at the Howard Britton thing. He owned like a walnut tree forest in Canada. He owned a gas and oil pipeline. If I remember correctly, he owned part of the Florida Marlins. He had all kinds of things that he was making money from. But I knew him and his wife, Marianne, had started out, well, her primarily, had started out basically by selling real estate. She still was selling real estate, but get this, listeners, she would donate all of her commission checks to local charities. So she didn't need the money, still wanted to sell real estate, and donated all of her money. And I thought that was, there's another story besides itself. But I asked Jim, I said, how did you, Marianne, become so wealthy? And this was when I was in my 20s, early 30s maybe, I think late 20s now I'm thinking about it. And he was probably at the time in his 60s or his 70s. And he said exactly what Warren Buffett said. We started out by saving 10%, and we always kept our personal burn rate or our overhead, very moderate. We never, we didn't have a real consumptive lifestyle. And then we increased it to 20% and 30%. And then that bucket of money started to compound. We started investing in different things. Sometimes we had winners, sometimes we had losers. to the amount where they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how it works. It can work for you. It can work for everyone. Oh, I remember, Julie, he originally started out by flipping farms.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Forgot about that. That's interesting.
And I think it was in Illinois, now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it was someplace in the Midwest. I remember that, and it was so cool of him to take you under his wing, too.
Yeah, it was. I didn't talk to him
No, but, he didn't have to give you the time of day, but he is a great, mentor. And we're talking about him today.
Yeah, it was less than a dozen times. I remember the first time he called me, it was out of the blue, and he didn't say who it was, and I didn't recognize his voice, because we were at a Howard Britton thing, and I was on stage, and I was on, I'll tell you guys will appreciate this. So I was probably 27, maybe 28, and I was on stage with all these other agents that were Howard Britton stars that were easily twice my age for the most part. No, I wouldn't say that. They're probably in their 40s, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And the room was full. There's probably 500 people in the room, and it was a breakout session. You guys have all been to those things. And it was towards the end of the session, and the session was about wealth building. And all of these other Howard Britton stars were, very much into the marketing and branding. In other words, they love to spend their money. I'm not criticizing, I'm just telling you as I remember it. They love to spend their money on marketing and branding, on things to basically make themselves seem famous. Guys, this was in the 90s, so I want you to keep in mind that the whole marketing and branding thing is not new. It's been around forever. And so what would happen is they would get whatever money they made, they would spend it. And there were very few of them that had any significant net worth. And I only found that out after years passed, when Julie and I were focused on building our own essentially net worth, and we'd go to some of these people for advice, and then we kind of put two and two together and realized that they were not rich, and most of them were far, far from being wealthy. So rich comes first, then wealthy. Wealthy is where rich is where your money works for you, and you no longer have to work for your money. And I'm kind of ruining my spoiler here. But so someone in the audience asked, they said, and this was towards the end of the thing. No, he asked, I remember. So in saunters this sort of, dusty looking guy wearing jeans. And I think he was wearing a white shirt or maybe a jeans shirt or something. And he's in the back of the room, and he stands up and he asks this question. He didn't wait for the mic. And he goes, "What is rich?" That's what he said. I'll never forget this. And actually, as I say this story, I'm walking around and I'm remembering actually what it looked like when he was in the back of the room. And none of the other, so during this panel, I hardly spoke at all because these other Howard Britton stars, these top producing agents, were always fighting for the mic because they loved the attention, frankly. And I was at the end. I was at the end on the audience's left side. And I didn't hardly say a damn thing. And so it's towards the end, and this guy saunters in and he asks that question, just sort of out of the blue, and everyone sort of gasps and the room gets quiet. And the other panelists, and I remember who they are, but I'm not going to say their names. The other panelists, none of them wanted to answer. Remember, this is a group of Howard Britton stars, top producing agents, who were fighting for the mic not seconds ago. And they all looked around, and then I sort of leaned forward and I looked down the table at the other panelists, and they're all going like, I don't know, well, I don't want to answer that question. And so I said, well, I'll answer it. And I said, this is all I said. I said, rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. That's what I said. And then the audience clapped and everyone laughed, and people came up and whatever. That was it, the end of the panel. But what was really interesting was what happened after. So what happened after was the other panelists came up to me and they said, "Tim, that was such a great answer. Do you know who that was that asked you that question? It was Jim Duvall." Jim Duvall, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, who's Jim Duvall? And they started telling me. And all of this, and it was funny because I evidently had given the right answer. I won the prize without really knowing it. But what was really interesting is that's when Jim Duvall started calling me out of the blue. Mm-hmm. So the first time he called me, again, I didn't know him. I sort of only seen him when he was a little speck of the back of the room, and then we started having these conversations. So I guess my answer kind of intrigued him that maybe I just wasn't a normal real estate agent. But that's the whole story. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, but and also that's a great example of too soon to tell. I mean, look at the impact and how we've taken that story. You especially have taken that story forward, and now are you sharing it on the podcast and with the coaches and our coaching clients?
Well, being involved, I remember when you and I became Howard Britton stars. I always take this back to age, and it's kind of funny that I say this because when you and I joined, we didn't even join. You have to be selected to be a Howard Britton star. I think there were only like 50 Howard Britton stars. Mm-hmm. In that day and age, being a Howard Britton star was seen in real estate as one of the greatest honors you could possibly have. It was like essentially being selected to be part of the, an Olympic team. I'm just telling you guys, it was super elite. Howard passed away a few years ago, and there's been no comparison. But I remember Julie and I when we were Howard Brinton stars, I think in our third year of selling real estate or second, something like that.
It was third, yeah.
Yeah, and so I thought, well, heck yeah, of course we're going to do this. It's a great honor. And my whole goal, and Julie and I's whole goal when we got into selling real estate was to be rich where money worked for us and we no longer had to work for our money. And we didn't know anything about the marketing and the branding stuff when we got into real estate. We just knew real estate was a great vehicle for us to make a hell of a lot more money than we otherwise would have, and it was. But only if we then saved that money and invested it into rental properties and other things, which we did. But I remember going to the Howard Brinton. He would have these, every year he would have these retreats. And they usually happen this time of year. And they were always super expensive places where Julie and I had to gasp even to consider going because it was so damn expensive.
Yep.
We had spent just a ridiculous amount of money to go to these things, but we wanted to go after all. That's the whole reason we wanted to be Howard Brinton stars, is so we could be in these massively important rooms with all these hugely successful, wealthy, the whole thing. We had to really build it up in our minds. We'd finally gotten the golden ticket for the secret conference room where all the book of secrets is passed. Okay.
Well, this is before coaching existed too.
Oh yeah, coaching
This kind of was coaching back then.
Well, really, Howard started coaching, and that was probably in 2000. I mean, that's when you and I started taking our first clients. But in any event, so and we went to this thing hoping that we were going to learn about all the things that we had to have learned about to build wealth, and what we teach you guys in Premier Coaching and hopefully on this podcast occasionally. And never were the conversations about those things. They're always about lead generation, building your team, building your brand, buying moving trucks, buying radio ads. I remember one time, the last time we went, we were sitting in a room and there were breakout sessions. And I'm not kidding you guys, and I roll my eyes as I say this because it was so disappointing. The conversation in the room was about frickin' pumpkin pies. I'm not frickin', I'm trying not to use bad words, but it was soul crushing. We went there to learn how to buy multifamilies or how to,
build wealth.
Build wealth. I mean, that was our mission. Is we wanted. Why else the hell do you get in business? Well, what's your point of starting a business and going through running a business, being an entrepreneur? And this is a quote from Elon Musk, but it's definitely true. It's like staring into the abyss and chewing on glass. That's what it's like.
Some days.
Some days. Well, especially when you're first getting started. My nephew Ethan asked me about that. He asked if it's supposed to suck as much as it does. And I said worse, because it does, but nobody tells you that.
Yep.
Well, it's even worse now because you guys are so distracted with all the Mickey Mouse about buying leads and branding and all these other things and CRMs. And, for us, the internet hadn't really fired up and started adding more, fuel to the distraction fire. But yeah, so we were sitting in this room and we were waiting for some big, conversation about the things that we wanted to learn about, and they never happened. They never happened. And then I started searching other places, and Julie and I both did. And nobody ever talks about this stuff. That's when we realized, and we asked our accountant. Our accountant wasn't, a great source of anything other than how to fill out the damn tax forms. That's when Julie and I figured out that we have to basically be our own best coaches and mentors when it comes to things like building profitable businesses, when it comes to things like building wealth, compounding interest, and all the things, right? And I think it was a little bit depressing, but it was also, the reason I'm telling you guys all this now is because the reason you don't know or don't have enough knowledge about how to actually build wealth consistently is because most people don't know. That's the answer. Because most people have never done it. When we went to that room full of Howard Brinton stars expecting them to there were probably a couple of them, and I know who they were, that had actually done it. But for the most part, all those people were just essentially really a good month. If they had 3 or 4 bad months in a row, they were probably financially destitute. Kind of like what's happening now in the industry. But yeah, we went to our accountant asking them for advice, no advice. We went to we had a guy who was selling a stock, asked him for advice, no advice. All these people, because most people really aren't focused on truly becoming rich where their money works for them and they no longer have to work for their money, let alone wealthy. And that was what was really surprising, because I assumed, and Julie and I assumed, that everyone wanted to be financially free. But it turns out everyone says they want to, but very few people are willing to do what's necessary to actually become financially free. And that's even more so now, which is crazy. Most people just want to be they want to be recognized, they want to have some attention, adulation, and they want to be comfortable. That's what most people trade their freedom for, just a sense of comfort. And that's, I don't know, and I'm trying not to sound judgy, but That is kind of sad, because the other side of accepting the fact or embracing the fact that you can be financially free is a very clear path to getting to the point where you no longer have to work for money, and where your money start consistently working for you. And it's not just from the cash flow from rental properties, the cash flow from multiple businesses, but it can be the cash flow from dividend paying stocks. It can be cash flow from just all kinds of different things. And then when you wake up every morning, it's not like, oh, I got to go back. You can have money. For example, there's earned income, and so earned income is what you make from selling houses. And let's just keep it simple. There's passive income. Passive income, even unrealized passive income, would be like the appreciation of rental properties. How long is it going to take you to get to the point where you're making more money every single day, week, month, year from your passive income sources than your earned income? So if you make $1 million selling real estate, congratulations. What your goal should be is to make $1 million from not selling real estate, but from the things that you purchased and invested in as a result of you selling real estate and having enough profit to buy those investments. You guys follow? When you wake up and you look at your, monarchmoney.com and you see all your little income generating, your real estate and your stocks and the things we teach you in Premier Coaching, and we want you to research on your own, just read Warren Buffett books, and you see that you've earned more money from passive sources than you've actually earned from your earned income, congratulations, okay? That means that your money is now working for you, and probably you're getting real close if you're not already at the point where you no longer have to work for your money. Why not do that? Why not make that the North Star of your business? That's the essence of what we teach you guys in Premier Coaching. It's not about ego. It's not about narcissism. It's not about look at me. It's not about teaching how to be an influencer. If that's what you want, we're not the coaches for you. There's no two ways about it. We cannot lie to you and tell you that the more people that like and follow you on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, the more net profit you're going to make. It's not true. It's a lie. So we're not going to lie to you. We're going to tell you the truth. And hopefully we are inspiring at least some of you to take action.
Well, thank you for all of that. And it all does relate back to, the point that kicked all of that off, because you can't make those investments if you don't start the discipline of saving the 10% off of every check. And you can't do that if you don't first find a repeatable, duplicatable skill set in order to produce that.
Exactly.
Right?
Thank
Just
you.
taking it full circle, you have to start with that, because I'm sure that we have some listeners that are saying, hang on a second, Tim, I'm just trying to pay my bills and have a little something extra at the end, right? And make sure my taxes are paid and this and that. Well, we all started there. It's the difference between people who get there and people who continue the struggle is the discipline of it.
That's right.
And that's the slow, boring, repetitious, boredom pays off part.
Exactly. But they don't have anybody that they can have as a mentor or any path that they can follow that ever shows them how to break free of what in essence is the grind.
Well, yes, they do.
Well, us.
Premier Coaching.
I wish I had us when we were.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, can you
'Cause
imagine?
We learned a lot of things.
Can you imagine
things
if
the hard way, right?
Julie, can you imagine if we'd walked into that Howard Britton room and that really, whatever ridiculous star retreat that it was that we went to,
Yeah.
and the room had been filled of us's?
I know.
That sounds so egotistical, but the reality of it is it's not. We would have progressed so much faster. It would have been just nutty.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I agree. So this is our way of giving back to that.
Yes.
Okay, so number 4, let's round out our bad habit list, right? Thinking you had to be born with sales talent. Now, this is a big one that we see from coaching clients. You guys see it in each other sometimes. Success isn't about innate talent. It's about skill, persistence, as we've been talking about the whole podcast, and service. The best agents are not necessarily the most charismatic, but the most committed to learning and improving. So you may need a mindset shift, some of you, on this, because sales skills are learned, not inherited. Focus on mastering your craft daily. Do the reps. And I added a point here, and you're going to ask me whether schnookered is a real word, and I looked it up, and it is. Don't be schnookered by believing you must have a particular personality style to succeed.
Yeah, it's
That's
funny.
a myth.
I was literally about to say that. Yeah, don't think you have to have an extroverted personality style to believe you have to succeed. So, Julie, I'm going to do a quick Julie interview, okay?
Sure.
Are you an extrovert?
No,
Do you have natural sales skill?
definitely not.
Okay. And is she the nation's #1 coach according to many people? Yes, she is. Okay.
Called versatility, folks.
Well, you can learn the sales skills.
You can.
And really, you can learn to appear more extroverted too. But not everybody wants an extroverted salesperson. Not everybody wants some, Bob bouncing off the walls.
Well, what they want is results for them.
Exactly. And that's called a professional sales approach. That's called, repetitious boredom pays off. That's called, knowing how to proactively lead generate, knowing how to pre-qualify, knowing how to present, knowing how to send a really kick-ass pre-listing pack, all the things. It's about being a professional. Imagine going to a doctor.
I've got the perfect
Did you
story for
choose
that.
your last doctor based on the fact that they're a huge bouncing off the walls extrovert? I bet you didn't.
Remember Louis?
Yeah, our dog.
Okay, so a quick story about that. Our original French bulldog Louis he had lots of operations, but one of the most severe ones was an ear ablation. It was a really big deal. And our vet, he didn't do those operations. He had to refer that to a dog surgeon. And he said, there's 2 different surgeons that I can refer you to. This one will hold your hand the whole way and have lots of multiple consultations, make you feel warm and fuzzy the whole way, and he'll get the job done. Or you can go with this guy who doesn't have much personality, but he'll get the job done efficiently. He's got a killer reputation, and you just have to know.
Not killer literally.
Well, not killer literally.
Yeah. Well, basically, he said one guy with the dull personality, or at least not the extrovert, is a hell of a lot better than the guy who's got the big bouncy personality, the big amiable personality.
Yeah.
The big takeaway is don't be seduced into believing. It's another insidious thing that we've seen floating around. It all stems from DISC, personality styles, Myers-Briggs.
And social media too, for being honest.
Exactly. And we've done podcasts on how to be massively successful as an introvert. So go back, good dust off podcast for you, Julie. But go back and listen to that podcast about how to be successful as an introvert. Just you can Google Tim and Julie Harris podcast, introvert, and then maybe throw the word success, and you can find it if you don't want to sift through iTunes, because I know we have thousands. We have like 7,000 or 8,000 podcasts now. But in any event, yeah, don't be seduced into believing that you have to be a certain personality style. And the simple fact is you just have to have skills. That's what's going to make you more successful. You know, I'm going to say this, and I like to say this on every podcast, because most of you guys are super slow learners. I know certainly I am, unfortunately, in a lot of things. But so the saying is, if you want ever increasing levels of success in your business and personal life, you have to learn to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And then the second part of that is that, you know, the levels of success that you achieve, there's a direct correlation between you being patient. In other words, everything you want in life is going to take usually 10 times longer than you think it should, which is the premise of today's podcast too, by the way. So if you think you should be successful right now because you're in your 50s or your 60s, well, you need to wait out an extra 3 or 4 years. You need to basically realize that you may have started out being proactive lead generation based, but let's just be honest, you got seduced by buying leads. You thought it was the easier path. You thought, you know, why would I want to communicate one-to-one when I can communicate one-to-many? You got seduced by all these marketing mavens that are leading you to believe that you have to, you know, create a bunch of YouTube videos in order for anyone to do business with you, right? You did. You know you did. So get back on track. Start focusing on your skills. Start focusing on the real work of real estate, and then you will build momentum faster than you can. So from a competitive perspective, the fact that so many agents are being passive lead generators and essentially thinking that they have to be micro-influencers in order to be successful in their businesses, that's going to be an advantage to you if you actually know how to do the real work of real estate. So keep all these things in mind. And again, we did a great podcast 2 weeks ago, great based on the feedback and the number of downloads, that you can be successful at any point in your life. And the podcast we made was specifically for those people who are really 40 and older, all the way into their 70s and really their 80s, that you can accomplish things at a high level no matter where you are in life. And the key thing is just to, in essence, you know, take an organized, disciplined approach, but never give up. It's a great day, guys. You know, when someone asks you, you know, about your day, and here's an answer I like to give. Anytime you wake up and you're looking at the green side of the grass, it's a great day. Now, if that's your standard, you know, it's not all these other things. It's anytime you wake up and you're basically alive, that's a great day.
Instant gratitude.
Well, instant gratitude, because that day is an open book for what you can accomplish, what new information you can force between your ears, the relationships you can commence with different people. You guys get it? So have that mindset, no matter where you are in your lifespan. Number 5.
Speaking of which, our last point, which I think is great to close with, because they're going to have a decision to make when this podcast is over.
Yes.
And that is procrastination or blaming others is a bad habit. Excuses kill momentum. The most successful people operate with the belief, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Your action mantra is, I'm a doer. I do things now. I get things done. Be a doer. Take action immediately when the opportunity arises, and stop blaming circumstances or others for your setbacks. There are people who are going to buy or sell today even though the rates are higher than they want. They're still going to do it. So don't use those types of excuses. And Zig Ziglar had a quote. He said, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. That's where it begins. You have to put one foot in front of the other and stop the procrastination. I find that whenever I say I'm a doer, I do things now, I get things done, that's like, you can't procrastinate when you say that 3 times in a row.
So I'm going to really drill down on something and try it into something that's happening. It's been dominating the news, the horrible fires in California.
Yes.
So there are definitely, life is going to give you a plethora of really good excuses to procrastinate. And I can't think of anyone that's more relevant now than if you're selling real estate in the Pacific Palisades or one of those other areas that were absolutely devastated by fires. We have a lot of coaching clients. We have a lot of friends, family, everybody else that lives out in that neck of the woods. An absolutely, unbelievably gorgeous part of the world. So you're living out there, you're listening to what Julie just said, and you're thinking, well, my whole market's just burned down. I mean, there's nothing for me to sell. I don't know what to do. I have, a whole thing. Worst case scenario all around you. Well, what do? We did a podcast the other day on what you should be doing. We did a podcast on the fact that you should be positioning yourself as a leader in the marketplace. Listen to that. I think it was on Monday or maybe
it was Monday.
It was Monday, just a few days ago, right? So listen to that podcast. And even if you are not in the emotional, even if, frankly, you're living through hell right now, one of the best things you can do to make yourself feel better is being of service to other people. So go back and listen to that past podcast. And then what you're actually doing is you're building massive momentum for your future. So don't wait for the literal clouds to clear. Start taking action on it. The procrastination thing, the reason it's so insidious, it's so bad for you, is because procrastinating on one aspect of your life, oh, I'm going to pay the bills tomorrow, that means you're also procrastinating on a lot of other things. Generally speaking, one does not procrastinate on just one little thing in their life. They're procrastinating on basically everything.
That's why this is a bad habit.
Right. It becomes exactly. It becomes a habit. It becomes a lifestyle. And then you lose a day, then you lose a week, a month, a year, and then you've lost a decade. And you've realized it's just because you're not a doer, you don't get shit done, and you don't do things now. It's because you're going to do them tomorrow. Because you're going to give yourself a break. Because you're going to give yourself some self-talk. All these little softy things to make it so you're not going to hold yourself accountable. Julie was a chronic procrastinator. She's not anymore. She had 2 things pop up yesterday, I remember, and she was about to write them on her list of things to do. She and I share a work table. I said, Julie, why don't you just pick up the phone and get those things done now? And she didn't look up, but I saw a slight facial expression to where she was laughing at herself for realizing that she was falling back into a procrastination habit of writing things down to do them later. She picked them up and she got them done in like 10 minutes.
Well, the facial expression that you saw was me thinking to myself, well, I might as well, because these 2 things that I had to take care of are not going to get better with age. Okay? Like many of the things that our listeners have on their plate today, your to-do list. We know, because guess what? We used to sell real estate for a living as well. I know that it's no fun to negotiate home inspections, to fight an appraisal, to ask a seller for a price reduction, to tell a buyer, they're going to have to come back with another counteroffer. But those things do not improve. They actually get worse if you procrastinate them. And that's why maybe the I'm a doer, I do things now, I get things done resonates so much with me. But I also share that with coaching clients, because you're going to have such a better mindset when you do the thing that you've been avoiding. And it also creates a lot more space for you to be productive in other ways, because it's not that gray cloud hanging over your mindset.
Well, but the mindset, the poison pill you give yourself when you procrastinate is you're not supposed to be doing it. You might get a little temporary emotional reprieve, but the compounding effect of now that we're getting shit done quickly, the to-do list, you stop even making to-do lists because they're too huge. And then things start to, the little Venn diagram of your incompleted tasks, it really wears away at your confidence. And you can never think straight. And you don't know what needs to be done. And
you get overwhelmed.
It's normal and it's natural. Guys, ever-increasing levels of success comes from doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do at the highest level. The amount of things that you don't want to do throughout a day when you're successful consistently is huge, right? It is huge. It starts with, in the morning, getting up. Most of the time that's not something you want to do. Dealing with the morning routine, dealing with a cranky kid that doesn't want to go to school, or whatever, all the things, right? That is called life. And just get through it. Those types of things you're forced to get through, because the kid's got to go to school, the dog needs walked, dishes need cleaned, right? Those are the things. But the things that get by you are doing all your lead follow-up, doing the proactive lead generation, joining Premier Coaching, premiercoaching.com. Learning, getting your pre-listing pack So the things that matter the most with regards to wealth accumulation are the things you, generally speaking, take the longest time to do. So we're going to teach you how to defeat procrastination. We're going to teach you how to build a really indelible business that's going to be something you will be proud of, more so than any kind of Instagram fake stardom or TikTok likes and my video went viral. Who cares? What does that even mean? I know what it means.
Did you set an appointment as a result?
Exactly. How much money did you make from that? Well, I didn't make any.
Made you feel good for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Julie and I get recognized when we go to airports. That seems to be the place where people, especially the Atlanta airport. And, I try to, when we get recognized, I always try to have a little conversation just to, frankly, because, we love meeting our coaching clients and podcast fans. They always say, I love your podcast. I really learned so much. And then we always ask, so when you see us, if you want to come up to us, even if we might look grumpy, we're not, but yeah, so we're going to ask you this question. Well, we love your podcast, or I read your book, or coaching client. And then we're going to say, well, what did you learn from the podcast that you like best? Because we want the honest feedback so we can give you more of that, right? If we had a pizzeria and everyone bought a pepperoni pizza and nobody wanted a Hawaiian pizza with, pineapple on it, we're not going to make Hawaiian pizza. You guys following me here? We're going to make lots of pepperonis. So we're going to ask you, what is it that you liked about the podcast? And I have never, not once, had someone say anything other than that, other than what I'm about to tell you. Well, we like the fact that you do it consistently. It's become part of our lives. They say it in different ways, but we really like the energy that you guys have. We really like the fact that you guys have become part of our lives, and for thousands of you, you listen to us every single day, and we are part of your lives, and you're certainly part of ours. But I think that's kind of telling. It's kind of interesting. I'm not criticizing, I'm just observing. So where do you go with that? How you make people feel, ultimately, how you make them, even if you lack skill. If you're feeling overwhelmed because you have to do all these things, energy and enthusiasm will overcome all. Energy and enthusiasm, when you're on your track, and when you're on the right track, learning, using our skills-based coaching program, Premier Coaching, will accelerate your life in so many really unimaginable ways that a year from now you won't even remotely resemble the person you are now, provided you're obviously improving, right? So hopefully you guys are understanding. What we're doing on this podcast isn't just educating you. We're trying to motivate you too, to ultimately, to Julie's final point, to get you into action. If you don't take action on what we teach you, we just entertained you as best as we could, and we're not really entertainers. We just entertained you. Please take action on this information because, frankly, that's our life mission. Our life mission, what God put us on this earth to do, evidently, is to be of service to all of you. Julie and I pray that we're in alignment with our souls and we're on the mission that God put us on this earth to complete. Obviously raising the kid and doing other things. But He put us in an environment where we are able to have influence on all of you. And our mission is to basically make your lives better and make your lives essentially more in alignment with what your highest and truest purpose on this planet is as well. So I want to sincerely thank you for allowing us to do that, allowing us to be on our own mission in alignment with our souls. And hopefully you're realizing that your true mission, you being in alignment with your soul, is you becoming the best version of yourself as a real estate practitioner. And we have laid the breadcrumbs for you on this podcast. The next natural step for you is to join Premier Coaching. Just go to premiercoaching.com. And remember, you can join Premier Coaching for free, so don't procrastinate in doing so. In the meantime, we'd love it, assuming you feel like we merit it, giving us a 5-star review over on iTunes, and do include a pithy comment. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.